So from Eric, how do you defeat an opponent with a very weak second serve? I feel like I end up hitting them long and out with my return rather than taking advantage of it. Thanks. Yeah, so this is really, really common, Eric. Short balls in general, really common problem that players have. So you've got two choices. When a ball is slow enough, low enough, and short enough that you have to move inside the baseline, you've got two options. Option number one is slow down and be careful, kind of like what we were talking about a second ago. And most players choose that option. And here's why. Let me show you why really quickly. The reason why players slow down is they kind of intuitively understand that they have to account for less court. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you're on the baseline, hitting a forehand from the deuce side, and you swing at a certain speed, confidence level, height, spin, all the rest of it. So the ball lands right there. Fantastic. Nice deep shot. If the next time the ball comes over, it lands right here, and it draws you inside the baseline. If you do everything else the same, then that next shot is going to land here if you don't make any kind of adjustment. So tennis players are smart, they get this, but they don't turn the right dials. They'll slow it down a little bit, be a little bit more careful. They'll aim a little bit lower over the top of the net because they know that they don't want to hit it too far. And they also understand kind of intuitively that they just moved 10 feet closer to their target. And so they have to account for that 10 feet somehow. And so usually the dials that get turned are the speed dial and the height dial. And as long as those are the dials that you turn, aka as long as you're just careful with that shot, then your level is going to be totally limited. There's going to be a huge glass ceiling that gets dropped over the top of you because you don't have the ability to move in and attack the way you're supposed to. And when we watch our favorite players on TV, it's really obvious, right? Those low, short shots, they're almost immediately in control, and they're on the offense, they're on the attack. So how do we do that? Option number two is maintain swing speed. So don't turn the swing speed dial, but you actually might increase it. Instead of changing the dial downwards, what we really need to do is change the path. So remember that phrase, the face sends it, the path bends it. So if on the baseline we hit a relatively flat shot, but when we get drawn 10 feet inside the baseline, we can consciously curve it and spin it to bend the ball into play on the other side. Now we no longer have to slow down. We don't have to play it safe and be careful. And this is really the secret to attacking that weak serve. So here's how you do it, like step by step. Number one, make contact as high as possible and as high as you're comfortable with. Because the higher you make contact, the better of an angle you have to the other side of the court. So that's number one. Number two, make the path at least as vertical as horizontal. So this red line is Nadal's swing path. That's more vertical than horizontal. He's swinging upwards with more intensity than he's swinging forwards. So that's going to give him more curve relative to drive, forward force. That's how you can start to keep these balls in play without slowing down. Now, you don't necessarily have to swing like Nadal. I mentioned before that most players are at about a 45-degree angle. Here's a player that's kind of halfway in between Del Potro and Nadal. And I'm just talking about swing path. So Del Potro is very, very flat, relatively speaking. Nadal is very, very vertical, relatively speaking. Federer is like right in the sweet spot, halfway in between. So if we do that same basic, really rough analysis, and we draw a circle at contact, a circle just a couple frames before contact, and then a circle just a couple frames after contact, what we'll see is really close to a 45-degree angle. So he splits the difference between Del Potro, who is much flatter than this, and Nadal, who's much more vertical than this. So for me personally, this is kind of the benchmark that I'm looking for with the students that I teach. I'm looking for about a 45-degree angle with the path of the racket, because that's more or less balancing out your forward force and your vertical force. So you can have a ball that travels through the court confidently, while also having shape and curve for safety. And so you can kind of have the best of both worlds. So let's just say that you get a really short ball and you're pulled way inside the baseline and the ball's like staying low to the court. Okay, now we need lots of vertical. So now we might actually need a path that kind of resembles what we saw from Nadal before. To get the ball up and have it get down on the other side, we need a lot of vertical swing. And so training this is critical. If you're halfway in between, then something like 45 degrees will probably get the job done. And if you're back behind the baseline, if you want to swing even flatter than that, you can. Or if your style is to hit a heavier ball, a higher bouncing shot on the other side, then do that. The bottom line is you need options, and you can't just have one flavor of forehand or one flavor of backhand, or else you get totally pigeonholed. You get totally locked in to a particular delivery. And so when you get a ball that's a little bit deeper or a little bit shorter, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, now all of a sudden you don't have the ability to respond competitively. So many of us regular players have a way flatter path than we think. We've been told swing low to high a cajillion times. And it's like, oh, yeah, of course. So I swing low to high. This is the case with very much with my crappy backhand, that I've been working on. Was what felt like low to high to me was in reality super level. So more than likely, you have to work on swinging a little bit more vertical. Hopefully these examples of Del Potro, Nadal, Federer really make sense, like visually. And then thirdly, make very confident swings to very safe targets. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's go back to the court here, and let's say we have that kind of tweener ball, not super short, but it's not deep either. Rather than aim here for the red X, what I'm saying is make a really confident swing without letting your foot off the gas, with appropriate vertical path, so you curve it and keep it in play, and aim for the green X. This is what professional players are doing, but we really only perk up and pay attention when the ball lands like here, and we're like, oh man, they're so incredibly precise. Like I can't believe he made that shot. Well, newsflash, they were probably aiming here with that shot, but it ended up being a little bit mistimed, and so it's closer to the line, and none of them are trying to hit a ball 6 inches from the line consistently, over on individual shots. Yeah, like maybe on the run, like passing shot, and it's like, well, I got to hit this perfect or else I lose the point. Sure. But on a rally ball or your average approach shot, they're not aiming 6 inches from the line. Give yourself plenty of margin for error. And so aim for something like this target right here with a confident swing, and that's going to be your recipe for success the vast majority of the time. Hopefully that makes sense. Those are your 3 action steps there, Eric. Hopefully that's super helpful. Thanks for the great question.